Great. So if you would like to introduce yourself and then just talk a little bit more about your background.
Okay, my name is Jeffrey Veregge. I'm a member of the Port Gamble S'Klallam tribe up here in Kingston, Washington. Even though we're saved S'Klallam, in our tongue it's Nuxklatliam Utsin, which means the strong people. I grew up on a reservation out there, lived there for about 30 years, the first 30 years of my life. Played baseball out there, basketball with my cousins, but my real passion during that time was comic books, Star Trek, Star Wars, Transformers, G.I. Joe, toys, which was not a real big thing on my reservation growing up, but it was always who I was. This led to me to going to art school at the Art Institute of Seattle. I studied industrial design technology, got my associate's degree there, graduate with honors in the year 2000. After that, I studied with David Boxley, a Tsimshian master carver artist from Alaska. I was fortunate enough, he lived a couple miles away from our reservation. I apprenticed with him, and he was such a wonderful man. I would bring him salmon, clams. My wife would bake for him occasionally and go and do his finish work in the afternoons while he taught me the basics of Tsimshian form line design in the mornings. He didn't charge me a penny for it. Just dedication and the time that I was given. From there, I went and got a job as a graphic designer at a marketing agency called Masterworks. We work primarily with Christian nonprofits. I started out as an intern, worked my way up through 11 years to be the studio manager and lead designer of that. It was ideation. Some of the best experiences of my life. I met my mentor, my second father there. His name was Rob Zawowski. God put him in the right time, the right place for me, because he was the guy who really I credit with getting me where I'm at, like giving me the confidence that I have in my art that you see today is largely in part because of him. Wow. Since then, while I was working there, I started getting a little restless. If you're doing marketing work for a while, you tend to find out that the client is always right, and they're paying the bills. But as an artist, you always want to have some control. You want to have that release that you do it. That's why we went to art school to begin with. That's why I went, because I wanted to have fun. So I started painting and drawing and just reading for a few years there, just trying to figure out what I wanted to create. And I played with some expressionism, blended that with some Salish form line design. And I was selling paintings, and I was getting commissions, but it just wasn't quite who I was. So I took about a year off, and then I told my wife, I said, I don't do anything like I did in art school. And when I was in art school, teachers, everybody would tell you it was always the same thing. Same thing it was in high school, same thing it was in junior high. It was always robots, Transformers, Star Wars, Star Trek, comic book heroes. That's what I did. And so I decided I was going to start doing that kind of art. And I didn't think, I went into it thinking if I sell it, great. If I don't, I'm having fun doing it. And that's why I wanted to do that. So I wanted to create art specifically for the pure enjoyment of it. Mm-hmm. And led to me where I'm at here today, having worked with Marvel, IDW, Valiant, have over 100 comic book covers, worked with some great people, got to work with a lot of my heroes and their families. Just most recently, I'm working with Leonard Nimoy's family on a project for help raise money for COPD research. And I'll be releasing a print for them here in next month for that. So I'm really looking forward to that. I've done some work with Lee Francis down there in Native Realities. Lee has been such a tremendous supporter. He was one of the first people, him and Aragon Star reached out to me right when IO9 first started sharing my work, maybe 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. And Lee's had me down there for the Indigicons, and we've been slowly working on my own book. I have the first book written. Hopefully I'm going to be transferring. I'm going to be doing the character designs and the covers, but I'm going to be working with Dale DeForest, who will be doing the illustrations for that. Okay, yeah. So we can get that moving, get that out there. It's a comic book of native superhero that you don't quite see in these today. He's kind of native James Bond set in a steampunk world. So I'm really looking forward to that coming out.
I'm working on my PhD that focuses on art as identity. And so I tend to focus a lot on visual and cultural sovereignty and what that might look like. For me, visual and cultural sovereignty looks at, looking at your creative abilities and art as a form of self-expression and identity and an understanding of your way of life or even your culture. And so I was just curious to kind of get your take on what cultural and visual sovereignty means to you.
For me, that's a great question, because you see a lot of non-natives really embracing native art. You see it in clothing. I mean, you probably see Navajo patterns everywhere, and every type's wearing them, and every type's trying to create and simulate that. And then it's the same thing here with Salish formline design. You see a lot of non-natives create and use that. Now, most of the time I see they respect the idea of it, but they're doing it for the wrong reasons. To me, the idea of cultural sovereignty is the idea of protecting that which is sacred to us. If somebody is taking over and trying to create art and they're doing it just to make money, to me, that's the wrong reason. If you're looking to advance the art form, help spread and share the message of the people, include them on the conversations, honor, think about what went into this to get to that point. Do some research on it. Don't just look at a few images online and say, oh, I understand that. It's much more than that. The shapes and how we've evolved as a people to how we express ourselves. It wasn't something that happened overnight. It isn't something that you could just Google and find that answer immediately. This is something that we have centuries of building, thousands of years building to where we've gotten, and to respect and honor that as you would any other art form.
Mm-hmm. Was there any point in your career where your work was used in that manner, and then did you actively, speak out about it in any way?
I did. There was an artist down in Portland. I don't even remember his name, and he started doing art similar to what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't great, but that didn't bother me as much as what he was saying, that he was going to be the bridge to the non-native world and to native world with his art, and that he was doing all these things but he didn't do the research for it. He didn't talk to anybody. He just made an assumption and made these very bold statements, and that angered a lot of us artists up here about it. We reached out to him, and I told him exactly what I thought. It isn't that you're trying to do the art. That doesn't bother me. It's the fact that you believe that you're the first to do this, or that you're arrogant enough to assume that you're going to be the voice for all of us. That's what bothered me on that. We throw appropriation around a lot, but the whole thing is, if you look around the world, everything from our way we eat, the way we dress, in every individual's home, you find some means of appropriation. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but remember the people that you're borrowing from and honor that.
So one question that I had was, what is one biggest opposing force that you encountered while on your creative journey?
The biggest force for me, you run into stereotypes. You run into things like my first job. I was working one day, and one of the executives, I overheard a conversation, and they were talking about natives. And they were saying, oh, they just get checks for their casinos. They're lazy, and they're saying these things. And I got really upset, and I went and messaged to my boss. I said, hey, this executive is talking about natives, and I don't know if she knows this, but does she know that I am? And they said, oh, no. And so they wanted me to, can you resolve this? Would you be willing? I said, yeah. So I went to her and I told her, I said, look, if I'm being lazy, or if I've done something and you want to call me lazy on, and I have been, you can say that. But when you say natives are lazy or natives are doing this, I said, you're talking about everybody I love. My mom, my sister, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, my friends. And you have no right to say anything like that. And she was all apologetic, and she was really felt bad and explained herself. And, you know, I said, okay, I accept your apology. But so you always encounter that sort of mentality that if you come from the reservation, I've heard, oh, he's from the res, he doesn't understand, you know, like we lack a certain sophistication sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
That's one that really bothers me. If I like a certain food more than others, instead of just saying, okay, why do I like it? It's because I was raised on it, instead of saying, you know, thumbing down at it. That's one of the things. And as far as my art goes, people would like it, and they say, well, I don't know, when I first started getting the comics, I don't think this will sell. I don't think that this will work. I can't see it, you know, on a comic book cover. It's really cool, but I don't know if people will be interested in seeing it. I just don't see how this can be portrayed as like traditional comic books are portrayed. And it wasn't until IDW gave me that shot, and Chris Ryall saying, you know, I think there's a lot of potential here. And he said, let's go for it. And after that, you know, it was an uphill battle. There's still some companies that still aren't too keen on the idea of it. But for the most part, you know, I'm still working and still having a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like, it's interesting when you talk about, you know, that whole notion of false stereotypes, you know, of Native people, and the fact that there's still this, you know, idea of Native people being invisible or still a dying race and things like that. And, you know, we're in the 21st century, but yet there's still those perceptions.
Yes.
Yeah. And especially just the whole idea of a res kid. You know, I'm a res kid. I grew up on the reservation all of my life, you know, but you know, the notion that I'm a res kid means that I'm automatically not successful or I'm not smart. You know, there's all of these, you know, ideas and stereotypes that go along with it, you know, and the way I address them is through, you know, the things that I do, through my writing, through the photography that I do, just even myself living, you know, and doing the things that I'm doing, you know, is my way of resistance. And I'm curious as to, you know, if that is something that you try to bring out within your own art, you know, within a lot of your own creative abilities as well.
I do. And that's why it's very important to me that I always mention where I'm from. I'm S'Klallam, Port Campbell S'Klallam tribe. I grew up on this reservation. It's important for people to understand where I'm from, because in my mind, I represent everybody that I love. And I want them to know that what I'm doing is just expanding our tribe's reach out into the world, and letting them know that we are here, that we're capable of doing wonderful things if given the opportunity and chance. And to me, that's at the very front of my mind and everything. That's why it's important that any art piece that I do, that you see that Native element into it, because it's a Native voice that's creating this. It might be something very familiar to people. However, I want them to know that it was a Native artist from the Port Campbell S'Klallam tribe that created this, that we have a culture, we have a reservation, we are a nation that's still alive and thriving.
Mm-hmm. No, totally. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about the Salish design, because I think a little bit, you know, I always tend to go back to like my own Navajo culture and how every design that we do within our rugs, within, you know, our paintings and things like that always have a significance behind it, you know, that are related to our language, to, you know, our epistemology and things like that. With the Salish design, and I'm thinking back at all of the work that you have in the Indigenous Futurisms show, are there like specific elements that go along with like stories or things like that? And I mean, feel free if you can.
Oh, yeah, no. So what I do with my art is I try to keep in mind the original spirit and the intent that the design shapes were doing. Now we use a shape called split U's, and split U's are used primarily for feathers in flight. So now I use those as part of capes, as part of sense of movement of a ship, or a blast from a laser. I use those as a sense of movement. The ovoids and salmon eyes are still used as joints that we would use in our art. What I try to do is try to remember and try to think about how the shapes are used, and then use them appropriately in the right manner. And then I take liberties on some of the stuff. So, you know, sometimes it's simply because that shape will work best with that. That I don't do that a lot, to me, because it's kind of bending the rules even more than I tend to like to do.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, it's thinking about what the shape was originally designed for, what my ancestors were using this shape for, and how would they be using it today. The designs that I use, so formline design is really a broad, much more broad world than people tend to think. We have regions where the art develops. Now, I studied Tsimshian, which is Alaska, which is southern Alaska, and my shapes are a lot wider and fatter than you would see traditionally where I grew up here, which is more Salish. The trigons and the crescents that you see, the shapes that have they look like Ys, those be more here in this style art, and I incorporate that. So I've kind of blended the Tsimshian art with the Salish. The color palettes even changed. When you study that, you see Alaskan art, you see more blacks and crimson reds or burnt umbers, with maybe a little white here and there, maybe a little seafoam green. But as you travel south farther, you start seeing incorporation of much more colors, and then that there is just a result of the pigments that were available to those regions, and also the cultures. When the settlers started moving out there, we found that there was more color palettes that we could start using. And it's the same thing I think today with this art. As computers grow and technology grows, we're finding that there's more ways to express ourselves in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Interesting. Yeah, I was just thinking I have a bunch of my grandmother's rugs that are up here in my house, and how there's specific colors to specific regions. So if you are a part of the Two Gray Hills community, the colors are more of that earth tone, browns, reds, grays, things like that. But then if you are part of a different community, they're a little bit more lighter, like beige and, things like that. And I was just curious if there's something like that within your own community.
Well, my own tribe, we tend to favor a lot of reds and a lot of blacks in our art. If you see a lot of it, you see a lot more of marine life in our art. Our crest is a killer whale, so you see a lot of salmon. You see a lot of you do see occasional eagles, and you do see occasional ravens, but it's much more aquatic life that we tend to focus on with our work, and the colors are that more natural colors that you would see from my peers I grew up with that are artists. They tend to use the more natural pigments that are indicative of our region.
That's cool. Yeah, I was just it's really interesting. I'm always interested in other people's their own creative elements that are related to their culture, and so I always have to ask that question.
No,
Yeah.
that's a great question. No, everybody, what I wish that our tribe had, that when David was talking about that he had a family crest, that they were from this family and his cousins were this family, and we didn't have that on my reservation. Now, I don't know whether it was something that we lost, because our tribe used to be a humongous tribe. It was huge, and when the federal government came in, they split us up into 3 bands, and we got placed in different areas up here in Puget Sound area. And I don't know if we lost some of that when that happened, but it would be nice to get that back if it is, because you want to know who your family was. And we found out through the records what our family's name were after they were given an English name, but I don't know what our family's name was before that.
Wow. for, I don't know if you're working on any like upcoming kind of work and whatnot, are there any like similarities to the work that you have in Indigenous Futurisms, or are you kind of going into a whole different?
Oh no, yeah, no, I'm working on some stuff. I just
Okay.
an art show for the Seattle World's Fair, and it was a futurism show. It was retro futurism. I love the idea of space exploration. I just got done auditioning for a series on IDW, which is very close to my heart. I can't share the details yet, but people who know me know that if I'd never work on another comic book series, they know that I'd be totally happy with what I'm about to do with that. And I start that next month. I'm working with the Space Needle in Washington, creating some stuff for them. And that's great. And then I have some public art projects that I'm working on simultaneously that are going to be really good. I'm really excited because we have a new NHL team up here in Seattle, and they're building a new arena for that, and I'll be designing the main exit mural for that. And they're letting me be me. Just right down the road from there, Citizen M, which is a hotel series chain from Europe, which specializes in avant-garde, hired me to create an entrance mural for that. And so when you walk in, it's a concierge, and it goes all the way around. It's 20 feet tall by 120 feet circular completely. Oh, wow. And it's the Eye of Prime. And they wanted me to create, because it's right next to Amazon headquarters, they wanted me to create something with artificial intelligence. So I did. The design they picked and let me do was all my favorite robots from TV and movies. You walk in, the first thing you see is Optimus Prime with 6 arms holding out like a god, and he's got this eye, and he's spreading out technology out to the world. You got nods to R2D2 and Robbie the robot and Lost Space Robot, old Bob and Vincent from Black Hole. All the things that I've loved as a kid and still love as an adult. That will never go away. The futurism stuff. I'm a space nut, so that's my first passion. I like fantasy, but I've never really embraced it as much. It's not who I am, and so I just try to stick in the worlds that I know best, and science fiction is definitely it for me.
Nice. Have you ever dabbled in with animated films and things like that?
I have. I got to work on the pitch with a lady from a native down in California recently for what was the name, for one of those anime channels, and I can't remember. And we did a pitch for that, and they passed. But I've got to do a little bit of stuff for PBS when they did Native America. They did a series up here, a local one, and it was a web series, and they were going to different areas telling different tribal stories that were traditional contemporary takes. And I came up with the concept for the show's opening and created the graphics, and they had an animator do that. And that was cool because I won a telly for that. And me and my son just worked on a film on the Sammamish, Lake Sammamish, on the kokanee salmon in the Snoqualmie tribe. And I created the artwork, and he animated that. And because they're an endangered species, and we want to protect them, and because it's the kokanee salmon were a way of life for the Snoqualmie people, it wasn't just food source. It was a very spiritual connection to them and their culture.
So you said that you're working with your son on a lot of different projects?
I've worked with him, yeah, and he went to school for animation, and he just graduated a couple of years ago. So that's his thing, his world, and I like that he likes it because the technology for that is beyond me. I don't have the attention span to commit to anything like that.
So he's kind of following in your footsteps in a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. So I'm really excited. It was really cool. He was just a toddler when I started art school, and he used to travel with me to my art shows and to my office, do things. So he's really grown up with both my sons have, and my daughter. So it's been good. It's kind of a family thing. My grandmother was an artist, and my great-grandmother was an artist, and she used to paint magazine covers for Liberty magazine back in the 30s. And she is a teenager, still paints better than I did as an adult.
Cool. So, are any of your kids going to like art school, or are they kind of on their own little?
My oldest son graduated. He went to the Northwest College of Art, and he graduated 2 years ago. My youngest son, he graduates this year, and he hasn't quite decided what he wants to do yet. He likes the idea of film or gaming, but he also is looking at things like Peace Corps and volunteer work. So I'm really excited about that. I really like the idea that he's giving back to the community in that way. Since the pandemic started, I've made a lot of changes in my life, and clarity wise, it's made me a better person. It's made me appreciate things so much more, and I've gotten more work done in the last 2 months than I can't remember. I'm pretty tired right now. I'm looking forward to, I have one more job I'm working on, which is a really cool futurism job that I can't wait to share that story. But then I'm going to take a few days off just to relax and catch up on my sleep. I think the pandemic has made my family feel closer. And my kids have been wonderful, considering that they're stuck at home and, missing their friends. I work from home. I've worked from home for the last 6 years, so this doesn't bother me as much, but it's definitely impacted my wife and kids. But they've all been great champs about it and understand that us doing this is for the greater good and for protection of family. We still go out and make deliveries to our moms and see them and make sure that their needs are getting taken care of. But and so we got to make sure that they stay safe as well.
Definitely. It's great to hear a lot about, what you're excited for, because you mentioned like a futurisms job that's coming up.
Yeah, the one that I'm working on right now, it came on. I'm working with Duncan Jones. He I don't know if you're familiar with his work. He does. He did the movie Moon.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So he's a director of Moon. People also know him. He's David Bowie's son.
Yeah.
And so I'm working on a project with him. I'm just doing a splash page in a graphic novel that he's working on. And that, just being able to do that, because I love his movies, mute that, and it's going to be a really cool project. This world he's created, and I can't wait for people to see what that will be.
It's gonna be awesome. Yeah, I know. Like, you're talking about a few projects that are kind of like still hush hush and everything like that, but very excited about it. That's really cool to hear. Yeah.
It's hard to keep secrets. Those are the hardest things, especially when it's something that you love, and it's getting to play in a sandbox that you've always dreamt of play with, and knowing that you're gonna add your fingerprints to this and be part of the legacy of something you've loved for since childhood. Those are the best jobs that I love. I've been branching out more and more with public art projects and doing more gallery style work, which is quite a departure from the comic book world. And I'm finding that I'm enjoying that just as much, because it challenges myself and it gives me a chance to grow and explore and see that influence my comic book work. And that helps me a lot. Don't look at your neighbor's work. Don't look at the people that your fellow artists' work. Don't appreciate their work, appreciate their style, learn from them, but don't judge your work. Don't judge yourself and try to compare. Artwork is not about that. If you're doing art, it's your voice, your own voice. Worry about your own voice and how that looks and feels. Don't feel any shame or embarrassment for it. If you know where you're weak, learn about it and find out and grow and take chances and be bold and strengthen yourself. Take chances and allow yourself to grow as an artist and strengthen those areas. Learn to take criticism. Remember that if they're coming from a place of love or place of authority, try to remember that it's for your benefit and apply that, and then go back and show them that you applied that. When you do that, it tends to you get more respect from them, and it shows that they'll be willing to share a lot more with you in the future. And the other thing is, don't forget the passion. That's the main thing. Why are you going to school? Why did you go to art schools? Because you wanted to be an artist. And that's with any job, anything. If you're going to college, whatever it is, remember why you went there to begin with, and don't lose sight of that. There's so many distractions in these today that you can get caught up in. There's social media, there's so much things on TV, Netflix, all these things that we get caught up on that we tend to forget what's the most important thing. So remember the most important things and your passion, and let those be your compass for wherever you go.
Well, thank you, Jeffrey. I mean, that was really great words of wisdom. It made me kind of think, about like, yeah, I should, think about that. Because sometimes, when you're wanting to you're doing things, that you're passionate about, but other things get in the way, and then you kind of forget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had that happen to me more times in the last few years than I care to admit. And you find that, oh, this is no longer something that's a hobby or something fun. It's now a distraction from what I originally set out to do. And that's where you have to make the tough choice. Is this important to me, or is that more important to me? And that's where you have to make sacrifices. And like they said, it's not tough. It's not easy. If everybody did it, if it was easy, everybody do it. It's not going to always be easy. There's a lot of times it's going to be tough, and a lot of times it's going to be so hard you're going to cry and feel like a failure. And it's during those times that you have to look back at your successes and the reason why you chose the field to begin with.
Totally. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. So we just have a few minutes left. I kind of want to do a little bit of like a rapid fire. Have you ever participated in one of those?
I haven't, but I'm looking forward to it. So,
okay. So rapid fire is basically, I ask you quick questions and you give me quick answers.
Okay.
Yeah. And just try to make it as quick as possible. It can be 1-word answers, 2-word answers, but like not like a whole entire sentence. Yeah. Okay. So we'll start off. First question, favorite color?
Blue.
Favorite movie?
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Favorite cartoon character?
SpongeBob.
Last song you downloaded or streamed?
Oh, last song. Soundtrack to The Right Stuff.
Invisibility or super strength?
In super strength. Invisibility will get you in trouble.
Favorite childhood TV show?
Star Trek.
Favorite type of season?
Fall.
Say a word in your native language. When are you most inspired?
When am I most inspired? That's a good question. When I'm relaxed, I guess, and when I find something brand new that I didn't know existed.
Nice. What did you read most recently?
Most recently, I read, what was the last book that I just read? So I just finished, I read a lot of the Star Trek novels. Those are things I'm reading currently, the Discovery of the Incas right now, and that's such a great book.
Nice. Okay. Finish this sentence. Without art,
the world would be a very dull place.
Nice. And then last one, what is the best advice that you have been given?
Be yourself.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Yeah. I always like those rapid fire questions. Yeah. Really quick. You get to know a lot about a person in like a small amount of time.
And you can get in trouble with those answers.
Yeah, yeah, true. Yeah. Yeah. Because it doesn't allow you to think about them. You have to answer quickly. Yeah. That's what I like about them. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that is it. Yeah. I appreciate, the time, taking, this is kind of the first of our public programs. Yeah. So we're learning as we go, definitely. But I truly, appreciate you taking the time to be a part of this virtual talk.
Oh no, this was awesome. They were great questions. They were really good questions, well thought out, and I hope that I gave answers that didn't made me sound like I was full of shit. So
No, not
try to be
at all.
honest, real as I can. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm gonna